Hello boys and girls, one more video for you tonight. This is going to be a relatively quick one. But in our discussions of horror films of various kinds, there will inevitably be people out there who feel like they have experienced something very similar to something that they may have seen in a horror film. Whether it was, an experience with like a stalker or, some supernatural thing that they feel like they've experienced, or any number of things. The horror genre is so wide and vast that it can encompass a pretty wide range of experiences, both real and totally make believe. Um, Now, for me personally, I'm really trying to think about my own life and the kinds of things that I've experienced, and specifically, like, I'm thinking about, like, you watch something like Poltergeist or The Exorcist, and you think about ghosts or demons or whatever, and people who have claimed to have real experiences with them. I have not. I've always wanted to. I've always wanted to experience the supernatural in some way. My good friend Esmeralda James is a paranormal investigator, and she works very closely with other paranormal investigators. And, I know all kinds of people that have felt the presence of spirits, or they've, whatever they've felt, or they've seen, like, an extraterrestrial ship flying in the sky or whatever. I know someone who claims to have seen Bigfoot. I know all kinds of people that are like that, and I don't ever like to lay claim to anything that I can't prove, or if I recount my experiences, I'll heavily qualify it by saying I can't prove it. But yeah, I have not really experienced anything outside the realm of the painfully ordinary when it comes to having encountered the supernatural. Now, I've most certainly witnessed cruelty. I've most certainly witnessed, some of the dark side of humanity insofar as, like, how we've treated each other. Some of those things, but they don't tend to fall under the classical horror genre. Um, Not really. If anything, they might fall under a drama or something like that. But yeah, I can't claim to have ever seen like a UFO or felt a spirit or seen one or anything like that. I can't really lay claim to a lot of the things that a lot of people have experienced, with one very notable exception. Just one. And what is that? Well, I shall tell you. And the reason why is because this film that I saw after it happened, and I specifically saw it just to kind of do more research into the subject. Um, this particular film, because it came in the mail recently, and it was something that I watched later on after this had already happened to me. I had never heard of these things. So I take what is described about them didn't exactly happen to me. I'll tell you what that is in a minute, but I saw a shadow person. That's right, I saw one. Now, what is a shadow person? And the movie is called Shadow People. That's the one that came in the mail today. Or not today, the other few days ago. Anyway, so I'm just kind of showing this off, but I'm specifically talking about this is like the only time that something even vaguely in the realm of the supernatural has happened to me. Now, what exactly happened to me? Well, this took place when I was in college. Not to, go on a whole big tangent, but I had a lot of all kinds of pretty serious health problems at the time, including having had to get emergency surgery, and it was very traumatic. It was very, it took me a long time to get over physically and emotionally, and I want to say that it happened like either junior or senior year. I'm pretty sure it was junior year, because I remembered, and I'll get into the story of exactly what these things are supposed to be, but I'll never forget it. So, um, I was recovering from, I don't remember exactly what, it's like a sickness, or maybe I, had, but it was something related to my surgery. I don't really remember. I know I wasn't feeling well, and my mom had been in town, to like, I guess, take care of me or to help out in some way or do whatever it was that she was doing. I remembered falling asleep, and I it was all the classic symptoms. I couldn't move or anything, and I felt like I was awake, and I saw a silhouette standing at the entrance to my door, and it was standing there, just a silhouette. It was standing there, and it kind of turned its head, to look at me, and it was around that time that I woke up and it vanished. Um, Now, I was experiencing what is known as sleep paralysis. It actually has happened to me a few times in my life, and it tends to happen when you haven't really been sleeping very well, when your normal sleep schedule has been disrupted, or you've been under some kind of great physical or emotional stress, or any combination of those things. Um, I always had a hard time falling asleep, even especially like when I was a kid. I just had a really overactive mind. I could never fall asleep when I was supposed to. I could never take naps. I'm still not a napper at all. Um, and I mean, look at me. I'm doing these videos late at night because I'm still awake. I still have a lot of energy, and I find my creativity is a lot more active at night. Just something about the nighttime that really helps out in that regard. But I've never really been all that great at sleeping normally, I guess. Now, when I was younger and I felt the sleep paralysis, so what it is it's something having to do with, I can't remember the exact chemical, but there is a chemical in your brain that gets released while you are in REM sleep, and it's meant to like paralyze you, while you're going through this deep sleep to help kind of restore your body and your mind and all that stuff. And basically, something goes wrong where the paralysis part is in place, and yet you feel like you are awake and you can't move. And, I don't know if, I can't remember exactly if you are awake truly or if you just think you are, because I've heard differing accounts. But for sure, when you are in that state, you think you are awake, or you certainly perceive yourself to be awake. And because of this chemical mix up, people tend to see really strange things while they're in that state. And I have had some pretty strange visions while I have been in that state. I just kind of assumed I was in a, if I was in a, I assumed I was in like a different state or a deeper state of dreaming, which, I mean, I guess technically sleep paralysis kind of sort of is that way, but what happens with sleep paralysis more often than not is you'll get some very specific kinds of visions that people will have, most common of which is shadow people. Another one is old hag syndrome, where they think that it's this old, hideous old woman like pressing down on them to where they can't move or can't breathe. And, that goes into the whole paralysis thing. And the thing with shadow people though is that they're probably the most common thing that someone can see in that state, and oftentimes they'll be just like a silhouette like this, like what I saw. Sometimes they'll have like a wide brimmed hat, um, and they will be silhouetted, and they'll often be like standing at the doorway or standing kind of over somebody while they're sleeping, and they're still not 100% sure why we see them in that state. Well, the I think that it's the kind of the neurological explanation is, I think it's like our brain trying to make sense of the state that we're in, and it's like trying to conjure up like a facsimile of a human shape, supposedly. Now, the paranormal explanation, they will say that it's like interdimensional beings trying to pass between their world and ours, something like that. there have been different groups of people, I believe in somewhere in Asia, I think, that died in their sleep because they were afraid of seeing these things. It was almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, and they referenced that in this film. Not sudden, unexplained nocturnal death syndrome, and it says real phenomenon where seemingly young, healthy people can die mysteriously in their sleep. Survivors of the syndrome report a feeling of terror while being paralyzed in their bed as a shadowy figure attempts to grab or strangle them. And yeah, that is a real thing. And it's a weird thing because it's like in many ways that fear is kind of brought about from having heard of the disorder. So it's like this self-fulfilling thing. Nothing like that had happened to me, obviously, because I'm still here. But and keep in mind, I had never heard of shadow people before. I had never known what they were, so it was not like a psychosomatic thing. It just happened purely randomly. And after that, I researched it and discovered this film, which it's pretty solid. I think it could have been better, but still, I give them credit for having made a film about the phenomenon that still isn't really well known today, even though it's been around for a while. Now there is this documentary. I want to say it's called The Nightmare, which I've not seen, but I've heard that as far as documentaries go, it's really disturbing because it does all these kind of nightmare recreations that put people in the perspective of someone who's seeing a shadow person in their sleep. Um, so it kind of has like a dramatic reenactment parts to it, kind of like what Haxan did, because that's technically a documentary, but it has a lot of reenactments that kind of blur the line between documentary and horror film. But at any rate, this was something that this is really the only vaguely supernatural thing that I can speak to having experienced in my life. I would most certainly like to experience more because I'm very open to experiencing that which is supernatural or metaphysical in some way. And I've just always wanted to, because if I experience that, then I think that would just open up my mind, and just it would tell you just how wondrous this world really is, even more so than what we can measure at present. But yeah, in this case, there probably is a scientific explanation to them. It probably is something neurological, but you never know. I mean, it's still a really strange phenomenon that people still don't understand. But anyway, I just thought I'd share that. I wish I had experienced more supernatural things, because otherwise I could have told you about them. But at any rate, what are some of your real-life horror experiences that you have encountered or felt or gone through in your life? Let me know in the comments, and if you like this, please like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon, set phasers to stun, warp factor 5. I am going to bed soon because I'm up way too late, but hopefully you enjoyed this. I will see you in the next video. Hopefully we'll have some more stuff come in the mail that I can talk about, but I'm trying to give you some additional content in between that time, and as I continue to branch out a little bit.